I came to Rutherford in 1969, and at the time, I remember I started third grade in Rutherford, Union School, and I was one of two Asians, in the whole school, and I think that was challenging. And I remember my first day of school being made fun of, being picked on, because of the being Asian, and that was fixed very quickly. And I remember just like having to stand up for myself very much, and I remember just like finding like the toughest kid and getting into a fight, beating him up. And then after that, it was just like everybody was nice to me, I don't think that's the way you're supposed to do it, but that's kind of like what happened. And I think it was challenging because after that, it was almost like I felt like I had to uphold an image and whatnot, so I became this like bad kid going through school. I think I was the kid that, when you went to high school, you always had that one kid that like, all right, that kid's gonna be in jail before he's 18. Well, I think I was that kid, and they immigrated from Shanghai to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong, my father actually worked on a merchant ship, and I guess the term is he jumped ship, when they were in New York, and he wound up staying. And then years later, an immigration officer wound up befriending him. He was a chef, and helped him with his visa and everything. And then he was able to bring his family over, which is my mother and my two brothers and two sisters. So there's 5 of us all together, And I remember our first year living in Brooklyn, when we first came. And here I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old. So you can imagine the experience that was. And I remember we wound up in Brooklyn, and the first day we were there, all the houses were like so close. I have little memories of it. And I remember the subway running overhead, by where we lived and everything. And one of the things you always remember, I remember a lot as a kid, is now we're in our second floor apartment that night as we just landed in JFK. And it's funny because I can still remember the #1 song, then was Sugar Sugar by the Archies, And we got to the apartment at night, and then the buildings were so close, and the residents across from us were these residents, and all of a sudden, like I never knew it, and then these girls were pulling up their shirts, flashing us and stuff like that. I'm like, America's a great country, So it was like, and so that's where we landed from China, and then from there we spent a year in Brooklyn, and I remember going to school in Brooklyn, and it was rough. And I remember walking in and into the auditorium the first day of school, and the kids holding the doors and everything. And I didn't know a word of English that first day of school. And and now I know what the kid said to me, but I was holding the door. I walked by, and this kid goes, "F you" to me. I was like, and I didn't know, so I was like, "F you," like back, just trying to be nice and everything, but didn't know, And from there, we wound up in Carlstadt for a year. And then eventually, it was like, I think right around 1971, 70, we wound up moving to Rutherford. And we lived on 298 Carmita Ave for many years. And that I still own the house now. So that house is still in the family, so. Like I said, a lot of it had to do with being of a different descent, and Rutherford was predominantly a solid white community, and like I said, I remember there was one other Asian family, in town, and at the time there might have been 3 African American families, so it was very white. And like I said, I had to like uphold an image. I had to be this tough guy, so that people would not, pick on me, and tease me. And as a matter of fact, they wound up becoming very friendly, with me. And I grew up, with that kind of an image. Like I was saying to you that, like I was that kid that was most likely to wind up in jail, before he turned 18, and I don't know what turned it around, but I think at one point I was just so out of control, and a lot of it had to do with my parents, you know, worked very hard. They had to work very hard for a living. They worked in restaurants, and a lot of times they didn't get home till like 11, 12 o'clock at night. So we were just kind of like left, to fend for ourselves a little bit. And I remember I would bring my laundry on my bicycle, garbage bag, handlebars, pedal down to the laundromat, wash clothes, and so we really grew up taking care of ourselves. And in hindsight now, it may have been a good thing for us, myself, my brothers and sisters, because we all became very, very independent, and those were definitely tough times. And at the same time, though, I think it was beneficial because it really helps you appreciate every little thing, in life, that you get, because you know how hard, it is to succeed. I watch my parents, I watch myself, and so you really get a sense of like enjoyment when you see the success now. So. I was like I told you, I was a terrible kid. Wasn't going to school, and when I did go, I was fighting, causing trouble. So eventually, they threw me out of school, and I cannot blame them for 1 second. I would have probably did the same thing, and then my parents at the same time were very upset. I wasn't getting along at home, and they wound up throwing me out of the house. And the only place that I had to turn was, I had a brother, my oldest brother was living in Massachusetts at the time. And I went and seeked him out and lived with him, for a couple of weeks, and eventually got a job. And I remember applying at McDonald's and being hired. And the night before I was to start at McDonald's, I had a call from Joyce Chen restaurant, which she was a very famous chef in Massachusetts at the time. She was one of the first pioneers of the cooking shows with Julia Childs, and she had a whole cooking line that was being sold at Macy's and Bamberger's, if you remember at the time. So that was all good, and it was a tremendous experience for me. And I think the most important thing from that period was I think I was scared straight. It really helped me a lot because, like I said, I was very fortunate. I had good friends with me, and I was able to spend a lot of time at my friends' homes, and I would eat lunch, have dinner, with my friends' parents. And I think what that did for me, and I didn't realize it at the time, but in hindsight, when you look back, I really think it helped me tremendously because it gave me a sense of family and what life was about and what life kind of like should be, painted that picture for me. So when I was kind of thrown out and left on my own at 15, I was very scared, and I think that helped me. I was kind of like scared straight to the point where I had this wonderful picture of family life from growing up in Rutherford, and I was scared that I was not going to have that opportunity, that I was going to be that bum on the street begging for money and whatnot. And it really scared me, and it got me very motivated. And at 15, I mean, I was lucky. I was smart enough to realize that I did not have a lot of opportunities. And I remember sitting back and thinking to myself, like, well, what can I do? Where can I go get a job? And one of the places, I mean, I would think about my choices were kind of like, I could go pump gas at a gas station, I could go work in a warehouse, or I could go work in a restaurant. And I chose the restaurant because I felt like I had the most potential, because I knew a little bit about it, and I kind of felt that, you know what, I could do this. Maybe I can learn the industry, become good at something, and maybe open up a little small business for myself. And I remember, like, my goals were very like, very, down to earth. And I remember saying to myself, you know what, if I could just make $70,000 a year, I'm going to be very happy and very successful, and that was achieved very quickly, when we did open up, and things just have progressed from there. So I've been very, very lucky in life. Well, a lot of it had to do with like myself. I've always loved variety, and I always remember going out with my friends. It was always tough agreeing. Like one person would want, pizza, another one wanted burgers, or another one wanted Mexican or Italian. So I kind of felt like, you know what, there should be a place that you can go where to satisfy one's tastes and cravings, and that's how the concept came about. And after we opened, um, we always had great press, from the publications, New York Times, New Jersey Monthly, channels, ABC News and whatnot. And sometimes I would get criticism that our menus were so big, but I did not care, and I always stuck with it. And till today, whatever restaurant I open, it's always a big variety and big menu. Like Delmonico, the last restaurant, I mean, when we first opened up, people were blown away. There was 50 appetizers on the menu, 50, and that's a lot of appetizers, to do. And and we get kind of crazy. Our style's a little different. And I remember my architect, when we first opened up, he would come and he would watch us in the kitchen as we got going and when we were operating. And after like a couple of weeks, he said to me, he goes, "There's only one way I can describe what you're doing." He goes, "It's controlled chaos," and that's always stuck in my mind also. And I definitely feel that sometimes. It is very chaotic. Anyone who's ever been in a kitchen, who's cooked on the line, I think would appreciate and understand that it is absolute chaos, but it's controlled, so. Early years were very difficult, and I think a lot of it had to do with not knowing, and always, I always believed that I was the only one that could do my work, and nobody else could do my work for me. And I was one of those guys that just could not let go, would not let anybody touch my sauce, touch my butchering. I had to do everything myself. And then what happened um, as the restaurant eventually became successful, it started as Village Gourmet started as a little deli takeout restaurant, and then after 2 years, I was able to expand. We saved a little money, and we were able to put tables in and started doing a little bit of dining. And I gotta say, once that happened, that's when the restaurant really, really took off. So it started to become very successful. And one night, I remember we were out messing around, rollerblading, and I wound up breaking my ankle and leg. And looking back today, that was probably a blessing in disguise. And like I said to you earlier, Bill, like being in show business, I could never understand why people would always use the terminology of like, go break a leg as good luck. And after breaking my leg, and after seeing what happened from that, I can understand a little bit. I don't know if that's where the cliche came from, but I certainly relate breaking my leg as being good luck to me, and it also taught me another thing where after that, I was always, no matter how tough life was and no matter how bad things got, I was always able to find a positive from that negative, and I really believe in that very much, that sometimes if you look hard enough, you can always find the positive somewhere, and the positive was that it taught me to let go. And after being in the cast for 11 weeks and not being able to work and sitting back, it made me realize that, you know what, they can do my work, and they can do things as well as I can. And what happened from there is I realized, you know what, let them keep going. And I was fortunate enough to realize that I need to wear different hats for my company and to start figuring out how to grow my company. And from everything from employee retention to networking to generating new business. And I think the employee retention is a big part of business because today I really, really believe your employees are everything. The one thing my mother taught me when I was a kid was she said to me, and I didn't understand it till years later, but she used to always say to me that if you depend on these, my hands, you're going to only do so much. You can only go so far with that. And she said to me, she goes, you have to work with your mind, you know. And like I said, being a kid, it's hard to understand. But then now I fully understand what she meant, and going through that, you know, my good luck of breaking my leg taught me that, Dad, you know what? I have to use my mind, you know, to be successful. I've always kind of felt that people would watch us and people would come see what we were doing. And there was a time I think that we were definitely trendsetters. And and I used to always believe that. I would tell my kids, I feel like every time I do something, I look at other places and they're kind of following suit and doing similar things, you know. And it was the one day, I think it was with the TGI group, I think it was Ed Doherty, that group who owned all the restaurants. We were talking to a couple of their executives, and it was in that conversation that they had said to me, yeah, we do that all the time. We go check out neighborhood restaurants and see what they're doing to get ideas. Just like myself, the way I would always travel to Manhattan and you know, frequent those restaurants to get inspiration, whether it was for cuisine, whether it was for the style of their service, or whether it was for their decor and how they did things. So I think a lot of times you need outside influence, you know, to inspire yourself a little bit. And I remember having been in Village Gourmet, and this was right around, we opened in '89, and this was right around 1995, 96, and I felt very stuck. Because before I opened up Village Gourmet, I was 25 when I opened up Village, and before I opened that, I had ran 3 commissaries for other people, ran 3 companies for them. So there was nobody over me. And all said and done, put together, there was about maybe 10 or 12 years there that I really didn't have much influence. It was all what I wanted, what I did. So I got to the point where Village was very, very successful, but I felt very, very stale and stagnant, and I felt like I needed influence and I needed more experience. So what I did was I wound up getting a job with Restaurant Associates. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I was operating a successful business, and I decided I wanted to go back to work, which I was fortunate. I had a great opportunity. A friend of mine was working with Restaurant Associates, so he wound up setting me up, and I wound up doing 6 months with them in Manhattan, 2 months, you know, at Cafe Central, and 2 months at Tropica, and 2 months at Cucina at Lincoln Center. And at the time, I was doing it because I felt like I wanted to better myself, better my business. And so I went doing that. I went and worked for free for 6 months, and most people thought I was absolutely crazy, like, what are you doing? You know, and I kind of knew what I was doing, but my plans changed a little bit because I wanted to take that experience, come back to Village Gourmet, and my thought was I wanted to make Village Gourmet a higher end restaurant. One of the things I learned at a young age was that when older people speak to you, listen to what they're saying and really try to understand what they're saying, and then figure it out, and then after that, you decide if it's right or wrong, you know. And so what he said to me was, I've been watching you over in Rutherford over there. You've really carved out a little niche for yourself over there. So that phrase just stuck in my mind. I kept on thinking about it, and thinking about it, to the point where I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just leave Village alone right now and not change it, because what is it really about? I mean, if I wanted to make Village Gourmet fancy, I mean, was that to satisfy my own ego? And was that what I wanted? But is it what the customers really wanted? And I came to the conclusion that, you know what? It's working, it's successful, leave it alone. If I wanted to do something fancy, if I wanted to do something more upscale, let's take another location and let's go do it somewhere else. Rather than taking Village away from your customers who really like what's going on there. So I think that was a smart decision. And then from there, we started just opening more and more restaurants. But there was also about a 7 to 8 year break where I just would not do anything. And there were so many business opportunities that would come about. People would approach me, we should do a business here. I got this restaurant that just closed, it'd be perfect for you. I got this property, whatnot. And I really, really, feel very blessed, because I feel very blessed that nobody would tell me or teach me, but I would think of things on my own. And at the time, what I was thinking about was, you know what? I had 3 kids, and my kids were very important to me and my family. And I kind of felt like, you know what? My business opportunities are always going to be there. They're here and now. They're going to be there later. But I kind of felt, my kids growing up was going to be one time, and it's very fast. And there was about 7, 8 years where I would just do nothing. And the only thing that I really focused on was putting time in with my kids and family, and making sure that I got my influence in with my kids. Because, like I said, nobody taught me this stuff. And my thinking was that, you know what? The kids right now are very, very, they want to be with you. They love hanging out, and you should really take advantage of that, because once they become teenagers, that may not be there anymore. And I've always raised them thinking that, you know what? If I get my influence in, when they get to their older years, you know what? If my influence is there, when they get to that path where, well, is this the right thing or the wrong thing to do? I really believe that if my influence was in them, that they would make the right decisions. So that was very important. And then after they grew up, I remember having a conversation with them when they were about 16, 17, and then sitting there talking to them and asking them, like, do you want me to still hang out? I could kind of feel it. They didn't really want to hang out with me anymore. They were at that age where they wanted to be with their friends and everything. And that's when I knew, you know what, now is the time for you to go back and take advantage of the opportunities and open more restaurants. And that's when we just started opening. I opened up Tina Louise, Mignon, and it just seemed like every 2 years I was opening a restaurant. And then we opened up Tao's, and then we did Delmonico. And Delmonico, I think, was probably the highlight. And what I mean by highlight is I think that's where I felt like, for lack of a better term, where I made it, and I think a lot of it had to do with, I came from a background that had no education, and I pretty much had to, teach myself and figure everything out on my own. And I think Delmonico gave me credibility, and what I mean by giving me credibility was, I was fortunate enough where, with Delmonico, I had James Gandolfini become my partner there. And I remember sitting down with James, and him asking me, like, why do you want to do this? And, why do you want me to be your partner? What's in it for you? And what's in it for me, he said, so. And I said to him, I goes, I think I remember telling him that, you give me credibility, I told him. I said, and I pretty much just said what I said before was, is like, here I've gone through my whole life, no education, and I feel like I've never had any credit for anything, you know, and I kind of feel like you being who you are, you know, you're bigger than life right now, you know, with the Sopranos TV series and everything, that if you were to become my partner, it would appear that I really know what I'm doing, you know, and that a guy like you would trust me to be your partner, you know. So that's how I kind of explained it to him, and it was a great relationship with him, you know, and I dearly, dearly, dearly miss him. The future right now, I have a big interest in real estate. I certainly want to see my kids succeed, you know. So part of it is helping them along right now, helping them get set up with life, and then at the same time, thinking about my own retirement and what I want to do in the future. And I think I do realize that I cannot sit around, you know, and I'm just too active. I have too much energy, and I don't think I ever want to retire. So what I think about is maybe having, you know, pursuing real estate a little bit more, getting my broker's license, and maybe running an agency. And I do have a passion for real estate, and I think that comes from because I just love to build and design, because I did all my own restaurants, and a lot of people tell me I'm pretty creative, but I always tell them, you know, you guys are too kind, and I don't know if I'm creative or I'm being cheap. And I would explain to them that a lot of my ideas when it comes to design and building is like this, the saying goes, necessity's the mother of invention. And if anybody's ever been through construction, I think you realize that when you get down to a project, there's no money left. You run out of money, you know, and that's always what happens when you get to the trim part of finishing everything. So when you have no money, you have to really be creative and figure out, you know, ways of getting the job done. And that's where I tell people, and that's why I tell people, I don't know if it's me being cheap or if it's me being creative. So.